Hello and welcome back to AAT's podcast number 7 with myself, Addi of Antibiotics.
And Aiden.
Good afternoon, Aiden.
Good afternoon, Addi.
How are you?
Not bad, my friend. How are you?
Not bad, thank you. So, before we get started, we'd just like to say to everybody out there, especially the people in the Ukraine, our thoughts and prayers are with you. And we'd just like to send our love, care and respect to you all. And we hope you get through this dangerous crisis that we're through right now.
Yes.
So today's podcast, as we're mentioning, we're going to be continuing on with the saga we first started speaking about, which was the Karate Kid. So today we're going to be talking about Karate Kid Part 2. And I have to admit, it was just as good as the original.
Mm-hmm.
It was great seeing some old characters, well, two of the original characters, and then also great meeting the new characters as well, which we're going to be talking about. Now, when it came to doing the research of this, but before we get started, I'd just like to say, Aiden, what did you think of Karate Kid Part 2? And what was your favourite bits about it?
The fight scene between him and Chosen.
Yeah, Chosen was a great character to come through.
Yeah, it was. And obviously the development with the family of obviously the sensei himself.
Mr. Miyagi. Yeah.
Just to see his personal life and how it was, it's always nice, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely, because it's a character everybody grew to love in the original movie.
Yeah.
And what was even interesting was when you didn't know too much about him in Part 1, other than the fact that A, he was a handyman, B, he was a karate master, and C, he was a war hero.
Yep.
But you didn't understand what happened to him during the time in the concentration camp that he was in.
Yes.
And you learned about it, and then it made you love that character even more.
Didn't we get a slight bit of information about that in the first one?
We did, yeah.
We saw a few pictures, didn't we?
Yeah.
In the first one, and is that right? We did.
Yeah, we did. We saw a picture of him
and he was drunk, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was drunk,
yeah.
and it was like one of the most iconic scenes ever.
Yeah. So obviously in this one it dives deeper into Mr. Miyagi's past, which is always nice because they did have the option to carry on from the story with the enemy, but obviously when we went into the second one, they chose to go in a different direction with Miyagi's past.
Yeah, I mean that was going to be another thing I was going to touch base on, but you beat me to it.
Yeah.
And but before we get started, I'd like to give a couple of big shout outs to a few people who watched our podcast, the previous ones, and they said that they bumped into me at the gym and they said, we watched your podcast, we really loved it, we loved the banter between you all. So I'd like to give a shout out.
Oh, that's nice.
No, it's always nice. So I'd like to give a shout out to Andreas. I'd like to give a shout out to Alejandro. I'd like to give a shout out to Nairobi. He's just one of the biggest fans we've ever had on this as well.
Yeah, wow.
And also like to give a shout out to Kieran. And also like to give a shout out to Ryan as well for, thanks for your support, bros. Appreciate that.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
No, they're awesome guys, all at the same gym together, and they were just very nice to get on with. And also want to give a shout out to Casper, who's just recently joined Biotic Universe. So big shout out to you as well, brother.
Welcome.
See, double the welcoming committee at Tango and Cash. The welcoming committee.
Love that film.
Definitely. So start off going into our topic. So the opening scene, that was when you see, which was one thing I loved about John Avildsen's direction, was he picked up this movie
straight from the last one.
So you see, obviously Daniel's just won the tournament, and he's asking Mr. Miyagi, I want to compete, a whole tournament career. And he's like, oh yeah, do you have any moves? And he goes, yeah, Miyagi already has one. And what's that? Early retirement. Just, that's it. He's basically saying to him,
you don't need to prove anything else.
You've done everything. You've done it all, leave it, delete it, move on to the next thing.
Yes. And I kind of agree with him as well. I mean, you've won it. Why do you need to win it again?
Yeah, exactly.
There's something else you can do in life.
Exactly. That's why he's trying to kind of like encouraging him to go for an education rather than just this, because he's only in his last year at school. And he goes, well, after this, go off to college and make something better of your life. Why do you need to do karate much longer?
Yes.
And because it's true that Mr. Miyagi is without a doubt one of the greatest characters ever created, and he's not just a character, he's like a father figure to a lot of people out there, not just Daniel in that movie. He kind of becomes a father figure to the girl he looks after in part
And
4.
also not that as well, the people that actually watch it.
Yeah, they learn something from him.
Yes, I mean, if you look at the people that have watched it over the years, they actually classed him as a, you know, a father figure as well.
Definitely.
Bearing in mind, obviously, he's not there with them physically, but when you actually see somebody like that on the TV, you go, I'll be badass if I actually had somebody like that in my life.
You would be. It'd totally be. And what it was, and then you see that scene where you see Kreese for a little while, played by Martin Cove, and he's pushing people out of the way, and he's like, don't screw with me. He's like, excuse me. He's giving Mr. Miyagi that real evil Darth Vader, just took off the helmet kind of look, and he's like saying to him, you know, yeah, you beat me. You beat me. And he can't take defeat very well, because if you look at Kreese,
ex-army, man.
He's ex-special forces. He lost the war.
Very well.
He lost the war in Vietnam. He kind of took that lesson with him, like, you know, the whole no mercy, where he's like, you know, I lost that war a long time ago, but I'm never gonna.
I'm not losing another war again.
Not,
and obviously,
yeah.
He looked at these fights as war, didn't he? He looked at these fights as battles, which is obviously the wrong way to go about it, because self-defense isn't about that at all.
Exactly.
Because if you think about it, no violence is actually put on the opposition. There isn't.
No.
Not in that kind of art.
Not in that type of tournament as well, because it's governed by rules.
Yeah, exactly.
If it was on the street, there would be no rules.
Obviously, he didn't think that, did he?
No.
So he took offence to that, and then he went all
war crazy. Yeah, war mode. War crazy.
Defeatism obviously is not something that he takes very lightly.
That's what he mentions again in the tournament. Sorry, in the school, when he says defeat does not exist in this dojo, does it? No, sensei. And you see that happening there, and then you also get and then he can't take the fact that Johnny Lawrence, again played by William Zabka, you know, he can't take the fact that this brilliant student who he trained for so many years to be his champion, and he won the tournament twice before he lost it to Daniel, and he can't take the fact that he lost, and Johnny still claims it was an illegal kick.
Yeah.
And he mentions that a lot in Cobra Kai as well, you know, it was an illegal kick, and so on and so forth. But Kreese can't stand the fact that, you know, what this guy's done. He's lost.
Yeah.
And that's what he says. You can hear him in the background when they're going, oh, you know, it's not fair, I got second place. You know, second place is no place, you're off the team. He goes, I did my best. He goes, you're a loser. He goes, no, you're the loser. And he smashes that trophy. I mean, he worked hard for that trophy in a way. He did.
He smashed it in a car park, didn't he?
Yeah, then everyone's seeing it. And it's like, who's the loser now? And he's like, you know, getting him in that choke hold and everything, that army
and obviously
choke
the other guys try and get him off him.
And
so all of his students have turned against him now because of this.
They've got no choice, because basically he's trying to kill somebody.
Yeah, he's trying to kill him.
There's tons of witnesses all over the car park.
He lost it. He loses it.
Yeah, because he can't. And then when he shouts that, and Mr. Miyagi, hats off to him for being so brave to come down and say to him, you know, let him go. And then even one of the other students goes to him as well, you know, Mr. Miyagi's right, let him go. Kreese just slaps him across the face, because he's like, I'm your sensei. What I say is right, not what this person is saying.
Yeah.
And he's like, again, and then he shouts that racist slur at him.
Yeah.
And then you can see Mr. Miyagi, the switch is turned on in Mr. Miyagi. Kreese thinks he's back in the war. Mr. Miyagi fought in a war. He fought in, but
there's a lot of parallels between the two. Both war heroes.
Yeah, they are both war heroes. And then he goes, you know, and then he tries to throw the punch, and he's moved out of the way. Now, apparently in real life, when they were going to film that scene, Martin Cove, they ill-timed the, because there's a timer on there, so he's going to throw the punch in these many seconds, you need to press the button at this, so it shatters it a little bit, and then he just puts his hand through there. That person didn't time it properly, and he broke it, and he did cut his hands quite bad. But he didn't care. He carried on playing. He
actually broke the window without the force smashing, without it being
timed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's some punch.
No, to be honest with you, you know, when you learn karate, one thing my sensei himself used to say to me: whenever you throw a punch, generate power from your hips like that. And then you're conducting.
It's not purely your shoulder movement. It's the movement of your hip.
It's like that in boxing. I learned something new the other day from boxing. I've trained boxing in the past, and this guy who I met in my gym, he was just like throwing shadow punches and all that stuff, and he was just I went and spoke to him afterwards. I said, look, excuse me, before you leave, I have to say what you were doing down there was absolutely fantastic. He said, oh, thank you very much and all that stuff. And he was a Commonwealth champion. And yeah, seriously, he was a Commonwealth champion. Very nice guy to get on with. Hats off to Andrew. Thank you for meeting me and everything. It was nice meeting you. And again, early introduction to Biotic Universe. And this is Aiden here as well. If you didn't see the first part, here you go. There's a shout out for you. And yeah, so he was like saying the same thing. Generate the power. It's like when you throw and go right punch.
It's all in the hips.
It's not only that, is it all in the hips, but it's like throwing those shot balls.
Yeah. And also, don't forget about the back leg.
Yeah.
The back leg, you move that. So obviously your back leg, you move that forward along with the hip.
Yeah.
You can't just generate punches with just purely the shoulder.
No.
Because there's nothing. There's no through effect.
No,
there's no through line effect. It's all supposed to be a part. The whole body is connected. If you can get the whole connection involved, you're going to get one hell of a powerful punch.
You are, definitely.
It's like tennis is sport or sport.
Yeah,
any
sport like
you
that.
move the hip, you get a powerful shot.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened was, when that scene, when he broke the window Martin curve, again, he cut his hand, he was bleeding, but he carried on playing it. And then he did it the same thing with the second window. Mr. Miyagi's just like standing there. And it was that true definition of the difference between these two guys' style of karate.
Attack and defense.
Mr. Miyagi's defensive art, John Kreese's offensive sport.
Calm versus chaos.
Calm versus anger.
Yes, yeah. Calm versus anger.
And they say as well, an angry mind is a narrow mind.
Can't get any more
clearer than that.
Can't disagree anymore.
It can't be more clearer than that, bro. And so what happened was, and then you see that scene where Mr. Miyagi's dropped Kreese to the knees, and he's like, he's saying that line in it, mercy is for the weak. We do not train to be merciful here. You know, an enemy deserves no mercy. And he's about to hit him. So basically,
takes his own medicine.
Mr. Miyagi is basically saying to him, this is what you've been preaching to these kids. And what, you're not practicing what you preach. And he's going to hit him. And Daniel's like saying to him, like in the back, no. And he's like, what? He's like, that was one of the funny scenes. I can remember watching that for the very first time and we were laughing. And then he throws him on the ground. And it's funny what Daniel says to him. You could have killed him. He goes, why didn't you? He goes, because of a person who has no forgiveness in their heart, living is even worse punishment than death. An amazing quote. Because if you look at it, Kreese has not gotten over.
Fantastic writing.
Hats off to Robert Mark Kamen for writing that scene again.
Fantastic writing.
And writing the whole script. And what was even funny was, it's true what Mr. Miyagi's saying in that second. He's basically saying he has not gotten over what happened to him 20 years ago during Vietnam. Mr. Miyagi, in a way, kind of gotten over it because Daniel kind of showed him the second chance.
I don't think. See, that's I have to disagree with that. I don't think he's gotten over it.
Not
I just yeah, but I think that it's still there.
Oh yeah, it'll never go.
But he's learned how to cope
and channel with it.
Exactly. Kreese. Kreese didn't know the proper way how to cope. He dealt with it through anger and through punishment.
Yeah.
Obviously, Miyagi, peace, calm, and training people the right way and forgiving the past. You don't really cope with it easy when you're doing it through anger. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. So obviously Miyagi, the right way to do it, calm.
Yeah. The
more calm you are, the clearer the sky, and the more you see, and then the more solutions you have.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like you said about a narrow mind.
A narrow mind is an angry mind. And
tunnel vision.
Yeah, it is. And so then you fast forward 6 months later, and then you get a gist of. Then you find out, okay, so Daniel's just graduating high school. I think him and Johnny have come on good terms. There was actually going to be a scene after this when Mr. Miyagi throws Kreese on the ground. All the Cobra Kai students were going to take off their jackets and throw them in front of him and say, we're leaving you as of now. We don't want anything to do with you. And then you see what's happened to Kreese in the very next part, in part 3, which we'll cover in a couple of weeks' time.
Of course, yeah.
And then you get into Mr. Miyagi's background when, he gets that letter from his old girlfriend and she goes, oh, your father's dying. You need to come back home after 45 years. And there was a really interesting scene where Daniel asked him, you know, why you never told me, why did you leave Okinawa? And he goes, I fell in love with a girl. He goes, what happened? He goes, it was arranged by her parents. She'd be married to someone else. He goes, did you know? He goes, yeah, he was my best friend. And then you find out a little bit more about what happened to Mr. Miyagi when he's like, oh, I declared my love to her in front of the whole village. I remember making a big speech, and my friend wanted me to have a fight. But what Daniel doesn't realize, what's in store for him, and what's in store for him is basically he's going off to a new world. He's not going off to another country. He's going off to a new world where there's traditions he does not understand. Kind of like what Mr. Miyagi felt when he first moved to America. And then they've booked the flight. And Daniel, there was a pretty good scene of acting by Ralph Macchio. Hats off to him in this. It's that scene where Mr. Miyagi's packing the bag and he's going to be flying out the next day. And Daniel goes to him, you know, Mr. Miyagi goes, I'm sorry things didn't work out, but, you know, because he was going to move in with him. And he goes, oh, don't worry about it. And I just hope your dad's okay. And he's about to walk out, and he gets that little idea to walk back in, and he's like about to say to him, do you think I should come with you?
Yeah, but this is the best part.
He said that so much without the use of dialogue. I love that type of acting where you can sense he's coming, he wants to say something, but we're going to wait down the line for it to happen. And then where did you see it happen? At the airport, Mr. Miyagi's boarding the plane, and Daniel just runs up and he goes, I'm coming with you. He goes, my mother says I can go with you, that's no problem. And he goes, I don't think this is a good idea, no, let me come. He goes, no, the woman's like, young man, you have to go back to the gate. He goes, young man, come with us. And then when he's learning about the true essence of traditional karate on the plane, when he asks him, your father and Sato, your best friend, if you two had a fight, would your father be the referee? He goes, no. He goes, well, how would you know who would win? Because the one who dies doesn't win. And then you hear
that's the first step. That's the first taste.
And then you hear that one bit. You hear that music go off, and he's like, that shock's hit him. He goes, I am going to be so far away from home. I'm going to be so far away from the tournament, from the cheering crowds, because this time round the combat's real. And Mr. Miyagi reminds him of it later on in the movie. He kind of reminds Mr. Miyagi as well. He goes, there's no 3-point win here.
Yeah, it's
you lose,
to the death.
I know what happens.
Yeah, so that's the first taste of cultural differences.
Yeah.
And that's the incredible thing, isn't it? When you see the level that Daniel is going into.
Yeah.
And he's swimming in deep waters now, isn't
and there's a lot of sharks. And then what's even funny, and then another scene was when you see Mr. Miyagi and Daniel arrive at the airport, and he asks him, was this place here when you left? He goes, no, I left by boat, no airport at that time. And then you see a picture of Sato breaking that log. And Mr. Miyagi, he asks him, can you break a log like that? He goes, I don't know, I've never been attacked by a tree.
Bruce Lee reference.
In a way it is, because like he says in it, boards don't hit back and Enter the Dragon.
It's true.
Believe it or not, in the movie Bloodsport, I'm not going to, just to mention it, another Bruce Lee reference, and that was, because you mentioned Bruce Lee, he goes, there's a scene in that where Jean-Claude Van Damme's character breaks a brick, and you see this big guy played by Bolo Yun who was in Enter the Dragon.
He was. And
he goes, very good, but brick not hit back. Mr. Miyagi kind of says the same kind of reference
here.
They're all
references, aren't they?
They're all references to Bruce Lee, because in a way, I think the lesson in that is basically, why attack something that you know is not going to do anything to you in return? What's the tree going to do to you? Absolutely. What's the board going to do to you?
Exactly.
What's the brick going to do to you? The brick can keep you safe, build a house around it. The boards can keep you safe, build a house around it. And what's that log going to do? Keep you safe. And you're destroying it.
Yep.
You're destroying your own safety, in other words.
Yes.
Yes. And just finally, yes,
that's good.
Got the reaction out of them. So yeah, and that was so. Moving on to the characters, who do we have now? There's no Kreese, only except in the beginning. There's no Johnny, except in the beginning. There's no Cobra Kai students, except that you see in the beginning. You have Sato, who's Mr. Miyagi's best friend. And there was what was quite interesting was in the plane scene where Mr. Miyagi, Daniel asked him, was he as good as you in karate? He goes, we had the same teacher. He goes, your father taught both. He goes, yeah, you were only supposed to teach father and son. He goes, I asked my father and he made an exception for him because he was my best friend. And you know, but Sato's kind of thrown out all the teachings, hasn't he? Because he wants the fight. Yeah. He goes, after so many years, you can tell.
He's another crease.
He in a way, yeah, but you can tell he's a force. He is a force, Sato. I think he's more powerful than Kreese.
Yeah, he'd annihilate Kreese.
And I think he'd even annihilate Terry Silver if you ever met him. Terry Silver's ferocious, don't get me wrong. You see that a lot in Karate Kid 3. You see a little bit of... You see it again in Cobra Kai when he's returned finally. And he's a great character. Evil, but a very great character, which we're going to talk about him down the line.
I love those characters. You always need one of those characters.
The ponytail and all that. He kind of made the ponytail a little bit famous. Not as famous as Steven Seagal, but nobody but Steven Seagal made that ponytail look famous.
He was an original.
Yes.
He was an original Steven Seagal.
Yeah, thank you, Steven. Woos. In karate, when you do bow to somebody, you show respect, you say that, woos, like that to them. So that's the old karate lessons being taught. Thank you. And so yeah, you see, you have Sato, who's a very rich industrialist. You see his name all over the place. You see the fact that he's, you know, a karate master. He's got a big house. He's the richest person on the island of Okinawa. He's he works with he trains the American military police. He has his nephew doing it, Chosen, who becomes Daniel's arch nemesis this time around. And what was quite interesting was
what a character he is.
Oh, he was a great character. God. He was lethal. He was lethal. And what was quite funny was when you see when you see Sato for the first time, and Mr. Miyagi's trying to greet him, he goes, "Oh, Sato," like he's saying, "Long time no see." Sato hasn't forgotten what he did. He still wants that fight after 45 years. He goes, "So coward, you return." He goes, "Yeah, to see father, then you see me."
The look in his eyes.
It's that look, you know, the powerful voice. He was like Darth Vader.
Yes.
In a way, he was definitely like more Darth Vader.
It's the look that he gives. It's the look
even with the sunglasses.
Miyagi,
you can tell through the sunglasses, that piercing look he's giving him. He's saying to him, you know, "You see your father, then you see me."
It's the expression on his face. I know you can't see his eyes, but it's the expression, his mouth and everything, his jawline, everything's just so tense, isn't it? And when he... man's a scary dude. He
was a scary dude, yeah, don't get me wrong. So, yeah, as you mentioned, like Sato, he's, you know, he is a force, isn't he? Not to be reckoned with, not to be messed with, because it's that scene at the end where he kind of like, towards the end, where he's declaring to Mr. Miyagi, "I want to fight with you, and if you leave, I'm going to destroy this whole village." He's got the power to do it. He's brought builders and he's brought bulldozers, and then you see that, he goes, you know, and Mr. Miyagi goes, "Oh, why are you doing this for? You know why. You destroy village." "No, you will. You leave, I will destroy it." Even his voice.
You see the first time. For the first time that Miyagi looks quite frightened. You see it.
Because he's out of his element. Yeah, he's not been in this element for so many years.
Yeah. But you do see it in Miyagi's face when Sato approaches him. I mean, when I saw Kreese for the first time, right, when I watched it for a long time, because obviously you have to be re-reminded, don't you, when you're watching this stuff. When I watched the first one, the reaction I got with Kreese was, "Wow, this guy." But when I met Sato for the first time, I was like, "Whoa, this guy."
Oh, you met Sato?
No, I wouldn't want to.
Caught him out.
Break my face, wouldn't it?
Don't tempt him.
No, you'll probably turn up here.
And have Chosen, bring nephew for witness.
No.
He says that in it. "I bring nephew for witness."
Yeah, exactly. But the reactions were, one was stronger than the other. Sato was definitely like, "Holy hell!"
Because you look at the size of Sato compared to Mr. Miyagi. Sato's about at least over 6 feet tall. Danny Kamara, I think that's who played him. He passed away as well. Quite a lot of the actors in part 2 have passed away.
We are talking about the 80s, though, aren't we? Which was quite some time ago.
Best decade ever.
And these were in their middle ages, or
later
on the years when there was filming it. So.
Yeah, sure. And but then if you look at it here, bro, look at the size of Sato compared to Mr. Miyagi. Sato looked bigger than Kreese.
He was.
And
he was a lot more ripped, and he was a lot more...
he was a lot more... What's the word? Commanding. By the tone of his voice.
Like a general, wasn't he?
It's fine. Yeah, best way of putting that down. He was like a general, because if you look at, he trains military officers. He's not in the military, but he trains the officers. He has his nephew training them. Kreese, on the other hand, was a military officer.
So you're saying that Sato is more like 10, 50 times worse than Kreese?
No, 100. And even 100, like, even more than Silver. I mean, it would be an interesting concept if him and Silver ever met.
Oh, wow.
It would be an interesting...
Sadly, it can't happen now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It would have, if he was still alive, there
Yeah.
would have been a chance if they would have met in Cobra Kai.
Yeah, definitely.
They would have had to have done that.
Yeah, because if you look at them, both their martial arts backgrounds are the same. They're from the same teacher. And what's even interesting about that scene, because even in a way, he still has a sense of honor to him. One scene where he demonstrates that honor is that scene when he's about to punch Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. Miyagi is just standing there, and Yukie, Mr. Miyagi's ex-girlfriend, who Sato was meant to marry, runs over. She goes, "Your father wants you, and he wants you as well," referring to Sato.
Yeah, so he stops. If that was Kreese, he would have kept going.
Yeah, he would. And then they run off to the house, and Mr. Miyagi's father grabs Mr. Miyagi's hand, Sato's hand, puts them on top of each other, and then he passes away. He's basically saying, I'm going to leave now, but I need you two to make peace with one another. And Sato kind of respects that decision, and he says, out of respect for my teacher, I give you 3 days to mourn. When finished, I come back, you prepare to join him.
Yeah, that's honour. That is honour.
In a way, yeah. And he's there at the funeral. If you look at it, when Mr. Miyagi and Daniel are placing those lanterns on the water, that's what in Japan they were doing that. And Sato's right there, doing the same thing. I'm ready to do this.
Yep.
And then towards the end, when he says to him, when he's trying to chop that big block, and he goes, is that the same? And Mr. Miyagi's at the house, and he goes, is that the same wood we found on the beach that time? And yeah, same. What do you want? He's like, I come back to make peace. He goes, you betrayed me. He goes, I was only 18. He goes, you should be responsible for your own actions. And he's like, what's happened to you? And he stops and turns around and looks at him, and he's like, Mr. Miyagi's trying to break that wall between them two, which is quite good. He's trying to say, look, we were best friends for so many years.
He's trying to get him to recognise the fact that it was a long time ago. They were young. They were, well, they were still kids, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And then when, and then you meet, and then you see, you kind of sense the girl who they were fighting over. And Sato just, trying to be the macho one in a way, and then you have Mr. Miyagi's trying to be the wiser one. And Mr. Miyagi is basically saying, let's just forget what happened. And then the scene where he goes, when Daniel says to him, it was 45 years ago, why is he concerned so much about his honor? He goes, when he says that brilliant line, Daniel's son, never put passion before principle, even if winning you lose. And he goes, you serious? He goes, in Okinawa, honor very serious. Honor has no time frame. I could go back 100 years later, and if he's still around, he's still going to want to fight me. He still want to fight me.
He will still be there.
He still want to be there.
50 years, 55 years, 60 years, he won't forget.
Exactly, and you kind of sense a little bit of that. And
Which is quite a miserable existence, really, isn't it?
Like what he says, person no forgiveness in heart, living worse punishment than death. Thank you, you just hit the nail on the head. I just got the reaction done. One each. It's like the tournament. 1-1, 2-2. Next point wins.
3-2. Who's going to win?
So then you have the character Chosen, played by Yuji Yakamoto. You could tell right from the beginning when you meet this guy, he's a troublemaker. When he shakes Daniel's hand, he goes, you karate student. He's trying to be all respectful at first. He goes, Miyagi-san. He goes, I am his great honor, I am chosen, we have car waiting for you. And Mr. Miyagi's like, how did they know we were coming? Sato probably has people on the inside, because he kind of sensed the fact that Miyagi's going to be here to meet his father.
It was a bit suspicious that there was actually waiting for them.
Yeah, and then he was kind of being a little respectful. We'll take your bags, put them in the boot, and then you see.
The first time I met Chosen, I thought, this guy's
all right.
This guy's okay, yeah. But then you see him. You see, like
he's terrorizing people.
Yeah, you see that's kind of that cheeky, suspicious smile.
Yeah,
like that grin.
It was that handshake when he goes, "I hope your stay here is a pleasant one."
Yeah,
and he's squeezing, and you can see like the ripped forearm going through.
Exactly.
And Daniel's just like still the scrawny little lad.
Yeah. But when he's in the car, when he's driving in the car, obviously he's the one who's driving.
No, it's the friend who's driving.
Oh, yeah.
In the passenger side.
Yeah,
and
but,
then,
you see his face, don't you? As if to say, it changes a bit. And you think, this guy, this guy doesn't look like he's going to be trust.
Yeah, it's that line when he goes, Mr. Miyagi goes, village south, how did you know I was being here? He goes, Okinawa is a very small place. And he goes, we're going, village is south, why are we going north? He goes, things have changed, Miyagi-san. And again, then Chosen, when he says that line, some things have not. There's trouble waiting. And then where did he go? To meet Sato. Sato, trouble is waiting. And then he finally shouted, Uncle! And they're here.
And then Chosen, then Sato just comes out.
That force.
You just think...
In that grey suit.
Yeah, and exactly that. The first time that's the time when I met Sato. I was just thinking, holy crap, this guy is... this guy's a lot worse than Kreese.
He makes Kreese look like a child.
He does.
I think he kind of... If he had trained Kreese and Silver during Vietnam, he'd have made them his kid. He'd have made kids out of them always.
Daniel wouldn't have had a chance if he did that.
No chance. No chance whatsoever. And then, so you also have the character Yukie, who is Mr. Miyagi's girlfriend, the reason why he left because of her. And then you have the character Kumiko, who becomes Daniel's love interest. And Mr. Miyagi kind of teaches him a little bit. And then when Mr. Miyagi meets Yukie after so many years, you can sense the fact that he still loves her.
Yeah, and
she still loves him.
Yep.
And then then she goes, how did you know how to get a hold of me? She goes, I've known for many years. Why didn't you tell me before? He goes, out of respect for your silence. He goes, because of your husband. He goes, no, I never married Sato. She waited for him. She knew one day he would come back.
That's when you see the regret on Miyagi's face.
Yeah.
And that's when you know that he's obviously... He's done a lot of wrongs, obviously, but the fact that she said that to him, I never married him, he was like, oh man, what have I thought I've been doing all these years?
Yeah, because if you look at it, Mr. Miyagi's father said to him, leave Okinawa. Leave before it gets worse. He goes, where do I go? Go to America. There's a boat leaving tomorrow. I'll take you there. And then, as you mentioned before, Mr. Miyagi regretting it. He mentions that later on in the movie.
He does.
She goes, we were young. Why? He goes, I made one mistake that time as well. Was that I didn't take you with me. And then towards the end, when Mr. Miyagi's going to pack up and leave to go back to America with Danielson before things get out of hand, she goes, why don't you take me with you? Like Daniel's saying to Kumiko, why don't you come to America? She goes, my home's here. And she goes, I don't think I could like America. Because I know one part of it that does, and he's referring to him. He doesn't want to lose her. He's already lost Ali.
But that's her home.
Yeah, exactly. And then you find out what happened to her in part 3. The funny thing is, when you see her in Cobra Kai, she hasn't changed.
Really?
She hasn't changed a single bit. Still a beautiful lady, Tamalina Tomata, who plays Kumiko. Even in real life, because they said in real life when, because she was a young actress when she did Karate Kid 2, and Nobu McCarthy, who played Yukie, was like her acting mentor. Just like in real life, Pat Morita was to Ralph Macchio. You could sense that. It was absolutely fun. It was like hit lightning in the bottle twice for them.
Yes.
It was. But then she said when Tamalina Tomata said that when she died, Nobu McCarthy, she was extremely heartbroken because it was like how Ralph Macchio was when Pat Morita passed away.
History between them.
Exactly.
You can't erase that.
You cannot erase that. And even in the Cobra Kai series, there's an amazing episode where, I think it's in season 3, where Daniel goes back to Okinawa after so many years. And he sees Kumiko. He sees her and he's like, you haven't changed a single bit. And she says the same thing, Daniel-san, you haven't changed a single bit either. And then he takes her to Mr. Miyagi's old place, where they were in part 2. And they're looking around, and he finds the very last letter Mr. Miyagi sent to to Yukie before he died. He says, Daniel-san has been like my son, the son I never had. And both his children are my grandchildren. And, this has been the best thing ever. But again, my regret was you and I never got together. But then he died. And then she sent that letter. Kumiko goes, he asked me to save this for you. if you ever came back to Okinawa one day to give this to you. So here are all his letters and everything.
Oh, man.
And it was an amazing scene. It was good acting by Ralph Macchio and Tamerlane Tamir in that. And then, because you could see Daniel's in for a big surprise when he goes to Okinawa. And that scene, you know, when Mr. Miyagi's father dies, and Daniel's sat in there because he's been through that experience. His father died when he was 8. And it's that scene where he's comforting Mr. Miyagi when he's standing there.
That's a brilliant scene.
Great acting. Mr. Miyagi is so much in pain without having to say anything. And he's like, you know, Mr. Miyagi, and Daniel tells him, you know, this, when my dad died, this happened, that happened. And he's like, you know, I'm now got the father figure I needed after so many years. Because Daniel went for about nearly 10 years without the use of a father, without a father figure being in his life. And then who does he meet? The ultimate father figure, Mr. Miyagi. Lucky, yeah.
Very,
it's quite similar to when in the Rocky movies where Rocky, you don't know what happened to his parents, but Mick over time became like the father figure to him.
Yeah, he did.
That when he said to him as well, you know, you had the talent to be a good fighter, but instead of that, you just wasted it. And then when Mick goes to him, if you wanted my help, why didn't you ask? Because I did ask, you never helped me. But this is not happening this time around. Mr. Miyagi saw the fact that this kid needed help. In a way, he refused it at first. But then he's like, no, you know what? I'm going to help this kid.
Yeah, he needs help.
He needs help.
So I'm going to help him. And he wanted to help him because he's never had a child. He's never had a son.
His son died in childbirth.
Yes. So it was his second chance to be a dad.
And Daniel's second chance to have a father figure.
So
it worked out best for the both of them. And then you see, you know, some of the good scene, you know, the techniques in this movie. Like in the first one, you have the legendary crane kick. You have the whole wax on, wax off.
I did that crane kick so many times in my childhood.
There is, see, he's guilty. There isn't anyone on earth who never did the crane kick. And if you said no, you'd be lying.
If you said no, you've never watched it, because obviously a lot of youngsters now perhaps have never seen it.
Yeah,
exactly. You have, but if you haven't, then fair enough. But our generation and the older generation and just a little bit younger generation, they know what we're talking about.
Exactly.
You know, schoolyard, play fights, and then obviously,
yeah, and it's true because it was an iconic kick. Hats off to Sensei Darryl Vidal for coming up with that. Yeah. And so in this one, so obviously in part 1 you have the crane kick, you have wax on, wax off, you have sand the floor, paint the fence, paint the house side to side, and this time around you have the drum technique.
Yes.
The drum technique when Mr. Miyagi takes him to.
Miyagi didn't want to teach him that at first, though. Didn't want to teach him that.
To be honest with you, there was, you know, in Cobra Kai, you learn more about it. You learn more about that. It's that episode where Daniel goes back to Okinawa after so many years, and there was so much of more Miyagi's secrets that he never knew. And Daniel goes, Mr. Miyagi treated me like I was his son. He'd never keep anything from me. And a mysterious voice goes, are you sure about that? It's so interesting. It's unbelievable.
Mysterious voice.
I don't want to ruin it.
All right. Okay.
See, I don't want to. I'm not the spoiler
alert.
All right, yes. Everybody.
It will be like a siren spoiler.
Yeah. So and then you have the drum technique. So basically, what he's trying to teach him is if someone's about to attack you, move out of the way. Like use the back of your hand, block it, counter attack. Because Daniel asked him, is there a counter punch in the technique? He goes, ask the drum, that little drum he has. And he's like hitting it like that. And then Mr. Miyagi says, you know, this is the secret of, you learn more about Mr. Miyagi's background in that. He goes, when he walks into the dojo in the house, and Daniel goes, I love this place, I wish we had it back home. And he goes, so who are all these people? He goes, these are all my Miyagi ancestor. This is Shimpo Sensei, the one who went to China. He goes, yeah. He goes, how did he get there? He goes, he was drunk one day at the corner while he was fishing, and he swept off. 3 days later, he ended up in China. And he goes, 10 years later, he comes back with a Chinese wife and 2 kids, and the secret of Miyagi family karate, this drum. And he goes, I don't get it. He goes, practice you will. He's like saying, I'm not going to teach you anything else right now. I want you to learn this by yourself. And that's why he takes him up on that canopy, and he's like bringing those sharp things coming towards hitting him, and he's like, drum technique, you understand? Yeah, I understand, Mr. Miyagi. And then then you see the other. Then he rips his shirt apart. And he does that.
Yeah.
Daniel-san, you okay? He goes, yeah, that was stupid. He goes, Miyagi father say same thing when Miyagi try. Miyagi father right. And because it's true though, because like I say, it was just a classic bit, wasn't it? And then you see the other scene where, and then he asks me, is there a counter punch in the technique? Ask the drum. Learn this yourself. You're far away from home. Learn something. And then when he exposes Chosen's corrupt ways, when he's cheating the village, he's using the fake weights. That's another good scene. Chosen's, you can see that expression on Chosen's face where he's like, you know, you're in for it now. And he kicks him later on. He goes, you know, you'll insult my honor again and I'll kill you. And there's that scene where then you see him again when he's like breaking the ices, the racks of ice. And he goes, you have a choice, broken ice or broken neck. He goes, oh, he's got to go through, because each guy's cracking between 2 to 3 and they can't do it. He goes, oh, you got to do all 6. He goes, all right, what are the odds?
So in the competition with him in the bar?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he goes, yeah, okay, so what are the odds? It's 3 to 1, he doesn't break. Okay, Mr. Miyagi turns up and goes, $600, he breaks all 6. He says, I can't cover that. And then Sato turns up, yeah, you are covered. And he smashes all the ice like that, doesn't he? Daniel, yeah. And then the funny line what Mr. Miyagi says to Sato, thank you, Sato. Pleasure doing business with you. And he walks right out. It was just a funny line, wasn't it? He's like,
you saw Sato's face. Oh.
When he says to him, innit, don't embarrass Uncle again.
Yeah.
It was good acting. It was even perfect comedic timing by Pat Maria when he says that. Pleasure doing business with you.
He had a great comedic style though when he
because like I mentioned before when we reviewed part 1, his background was mainly stand-up comedy.
Yes.
No, he did a few serious roles, but not as serious as being Mr. Miyagi. No chance.
That was his ultimate.
And he'll always be remembered for that. Either Mr. Miyagi or Arnold from Happy Days. Arnold from Happy Days. It was a show he did back in the.
Yeah, I know what Happy Days is.
Yeah, he played Fonzie, played by the legendary Henry Winkler. So when they came to having so these were the new characters that came through. So when it came to the choice of the story, the producers had 2 choices. Number 1, Mr. Miyagi's background, to find out more about this legendary character. Everybody wanted to know. Or number 2, Kreese's revenge. Because I think if they used part 3's concept for part 2.
Yeah, it wouldn't have had the same.
Then when part 3 would have come out, it
wouldn't
have
been the same. It would have ruined it.
Yeah.
They need a refresher. If they would have went straight into 3.
Yeah.
For 2.
Yes.
It would have drained it all out. With the energy for the Kreese and obviously Terry Silver, the energy would have drained away. Yeah. And then obviously the third one wouldn't have really mattered as much because we didn't know about Sato. We didn't know about Chosen, so those characters wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah,
they wouldn't have mattered.
And then what it was is.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, you're right. Because if you look at it this way, if they did part 2 story for part 3, part 3 story for part 2, Kreese's revenge. Then when part 3 would have come out, people are going to think, oh, it's going to be another one. It's going to be,
who are these people?
We're going to go into the tournament now.
Who are these people? We've never seen this before, so why should we care?
Yeah.
So 2 was like a breather for things reigniting again.
Yeah, exactly.
For Kreese and obviously for Silver.
Yeah.
And obviously with the other, who was that badass kid that came?
Mike Barnes.
Yeah. So exactly. So for them to actually go to have it as 3 was the best decision that they could make.
Yeah, of course, I agree with that.
They needed a breather from all of that.
They did, and then luckily they got the breather with that as well.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to, and then did you know the whole movie part 2 was actually filmed not in Okinawa?
Where was it filmed?
The island of Hawaii, which is quite close by because it was still filmed on American soil.
Yeah. And
it was the convenience of not spending too much money to travel out all the way to Okinawa.
So they did really well to actually make it look like the way.
Yeah, it did. I mean, like,
would have spent quite a bit of cash though to have some Japanese style buildings. So they probably did actually go ahead and build something.
Yeah. That
made it look like Japan.
Yeah, it did. Okinawa. So And then you see you see a lot of characters change through this movie. You see Daniel going from being a little boy to becoming some sort of a man. But in part 3, he becomes a bit more of a man. He becomes an aggressive person in part 3. You see Mr. Miyagi having no choice but to throw hands down with the old best friend. I mean, like I said beforehand, in that scene where Daniel goes to him when Sato is going to destroy the village, and he goes to him, if you don't fight me, I'm going to destroy this whole town. All you got to do is fight. And he goes, all right, then no problem, we'll agree. And then Daniel's coming to the realization that I am 7,000, 8,000. Playtime is over. There's no referee.
No.
There's no points. There's no crowds cheering his name. There's no rules. This time, as I mentioned, the combat is real. You fight to the death. Mr. Miyagi's father says it. Mr. Miyagi mentioned it. The one who dies does not win.
Exactly.
It's real. And then Mr. Miyagi reminds him of that when he's about to have the fight with Chosen. And he goes, Daniel's son, this is not tournament. This is for real. And in part, one interesting scene was in Cobra Kai. You see a different scene of this, which was added in. He goes, that scene where Mr. Miyagi goes to him, this is not tournament, this is for real. Daniel goes, I know, but I've got to take this fight. It's a scene where Chosen's got Kumiko hostage with the butterfly knife, and he's like saying to her, you cross bridge or I kill her. Chosen means business.
Yes.
I think what would be interesting if we ever see this in Cobra Kai, Chosen taking on Johnny Lawrence. I think it would be an interesting fight. Johnny Lawrence is a badass fighter, don't get me wrong. Chosen, in a way, he's kind of redeemed himself in Cobra Kai. Again, I don't want to ruin it too much. And there's an interesting scene in that where, like I said, there's a scene, where the storm kicks in. That hurricane that kicks in has destroyed a lot of people's homes. And then you see everybody has kind of changed their nature. Sato has become kind of good because Mr. Miyagi, when the storm kicks in, Daniel and Miyagi have ran out into the storm to save people, get him into the bunker, and he goes, Sato's, oh, you come to fight me now, you coward.
Yeah.
He goes, this everyone can see, this is the only way you can win. And he's breaking that block. He goes, oh, I got you, old friend, let's go. He's changed his nature. Chosen's run to save himself. When Miyagi goes to him, where's Uncle? He's dead. And then he runs back and goes, Uncle, I thought you were dead. He goes, go help him. He's referring to Daniel. He goes, no, I can't help him. He goes, like, what are you doing? He just saved my life. Why can't you go help him, help the girl who's up there on the...
Yeah, so obviously Sato now is thinking, what are you doing?
What have I done all this time?
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah. And then he runs over to him, and then Mr. Miyagi's about to run out. And Sato goes, no, don't. Miyagi, wait, let me go. I'll go help him. You help me, I'll go help your student. Because my student won't help yours. Yeah. He's basically saying that. And he runs up then, and Daniel's like looking at him and goes, thanks a lot for doing what you did. You came to help me, you came to my help.
Yeah.
Because, well,
it's redemption.
Because you think about it, Daniel's there with him, trying to get the beam off.
Yeah. But it's all redemption. He's
redeemed in that 1 second.
For Sato, it's redemption. He's realised now he's been wrong all this time, and it's redemption. Years, so the only way to say to Miyagi, I am sorry for what I have done.
Let my actions speak louder than my words.
I will therefore rescue the one person that means the world to you in Daniel.
Yeah.
So that's what he does. And obviously after that, because obviously he realises that Chosen's just done one and just left, and with his tail beneath his legs.
Yeah.
Then he's just thinking, okay, now I've got to do it now. Thank you very much.
I haven't heard that.
And he does. He does it.
Good phrase. I haven't heard that in a long time.
Tail between his legs.
Yeah, tail between the legs.
It's an old friend.
Anyway, still, it's good.
Yeah.
And then what was quite interesting was you see Sato's become good because he comes back the next day to help rebuild the village, and he gives the deed to the village. He goes, "What is this?" Miyagi's like, "What is this?" Because the deed to the village. Let the village. Because Miyagi says, if I win, no matter who wins, give the deed of this village to the village. Let them live their lives. Because you're asking too much. It's only a small price to pay. He goes, yeah, you're right, it's a small price. But he was going to pay the ultimate price with his own life if Miyagi hadn't come and rescued him. So then he says to him, forgive me, I beg you. And Miyagi's like, don't worry about it, there's nothing to forgive.
From revenge to redemption.
Yeah. Amazing transaction. Absolutely amazing, bro. And then you got
character. If without character development, there's no story.
Again, hats off.
That is perfect writing. It's
again, hats off to Robert Mark Kamen for doing what he did.
But if Robert Kamen didn't have the team behind him, he wouldn't have had the confidence to probably write it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? But it's
and then you see Chosen becoming worse. He's become worse because there's that scene where
now he hasn't got a father figure.
Yeah, he hasn't. And then when you see that scene where Daniel's going to, so when Sato goes, now to you I am dead. You didn't listen to me. This little girl could have died if you hadn't gone out there. I risked my life, but you were too macho and too full of pride to go and do anything about it. And he runs up. And he looks at Daniel and he's like, this isn't over between us, regardless of the storm out there. And he runs out into the storm and he sees him and he goes, and then you see him a few minutes later at the festival. He's full of revenge, Chosen. And he's like sliding down that zip line and he's saying to Daniel, we fight to the death. Your student disgraced me. And he goes, no, your apology is not going to give me back my honor. And Sato's saying to him, look, hate is wrong. It's over. Don't do this. Because you see that there's an interesting scene, if you see it in the background, where Kumiko, who becomes more confident, she's so shy at first. She wants to be a dancer.
Yes.
And Daniel's like saying to her, look, don't worry about it, I'm there, I'm over there. He's fallen in love with the girl, and you can't blame him, can you?
Well, you can't blame him.
Yeah.
Can't blame the man.
And you see him, and then he's like, and then he goes, oh, don't worry about it, I'm over there. And you see Kumiko putting that bridge back between Mr. Miyagi and Sato. What Miyagi's father failed, what he tried as his last breath, he put both their hands together, but they separated. Whereas Kumiko's done it, they haven't separated. They've agreed to be on good terms again.
Ladies touch.
Well, yeah. That was a girl worth, in a way, fighting for. They would say.
No one's worth fighting for.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, and then you see Kumiko becoming more confident, and then that fight takes place. And
what a fight it was!
It was a street fight. Like Chosen's about to jump on him.
He's going to
kill him.
Yeah.
It's like that scene where he side kicks that statue and he breaks it a bit.
That's when you think, holy crap, this guy's for real. Wow.
He's for real.
I was really worried for Daniel. I was like, oh man.
And then he tried to do the crane kick as I won with it last time. The same thing he tries in part 3. I did with it last time. It's not last time.
You're not going
to win that.
You're not going to do it with this guy.
He knows it because he's trained in the same style of karate as you are. Exactly. He is, in a way, if you look at it. Mr. Miyagi's father taught Mr. Miyagi and Sato. Sato trained Chosen in that form of karate. Mr. Miyagi trained Daniel in that particular form of karate. He knows what he's doing. But if you look at it, Chosen's way more skilled than Daniel.
Oh, yeah, and he's more ripped. The guy's strong. Look at the guy.
Yeah, he's like that, doing the whole... You could tell, I think in a way, he definitely had real-life martial arts experience.
Well, you could tell. You could tell the way his stance was. You could tell the way his natural body...
And the kicks he does, like the roundhouse kick and all that, even the front side kick, which is quite good. And when the scene where he's training the military officers and Daniel's outside watching him, because I just want to look at the outside, and he's like... And then he batters all those guys like nothing.
Yeah.
And then he looks at Kumiko, and he's like... Wow. He's not bad. Yeah. He's Sato's number 1 student. He goes, I can tell why. Like Johnny was Crease's number 1 student. You can tell why. This guy's more deadlier than Johnny.
You don't want to be facing that guy in the street fight.
No chance. But then, so you see, like, Sato becomes good. Chosen becomes worse. Mm-hmm. Kumiko becomes more confident.
Yeah, because Chosen hasn't got that. He hasn't got... Sato restricting him anymore.
No.
Now Sato
he's like
his grip.
He's like a dog being let off
the chain. His grip, and now Chosen has been let into the wild.
He's a wild animal.
Yeah. So he's got nobody to keep him.
Yeah, grounded.
Yeah, exactly. So that just makes him like, wow, this guy's going to cause some damage now. Because he's got, again, no father figure.
Yeah.
Nobody to actually say to him, look, this is wrong.
Yeah, and then it's that scene where Daniel does the same thing when what Miyagi does to Kreese, the whole honk and throw him over. Yeah. And when he says in it, choose live or die, he goes, I choose death. Wrong, honk, throws him over the ground. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the Cobra Kai series. In Cobra Kai, when you see Daniel sees Kumiko after so many years, they're in a bar having tea, a drink or something, and she goes, "I brought somebody in who can help you." He goes, "Who?" Turns around and guess who it's there? Chosen. Same actor, Yuji Yakamoto. And Daniel looks at him and goes, "Chosen." And old Chosen standing there with that same pierced look on his face, still in good shape. And he's like,
how old are they now in this?
They're like, Daniel's like in his 50s, Johnny's in his 50s. I'm guessing Chosen's the same age. Mr. Miyagi's unfortunately not in it because obviously, sadly, Pat Morita passed away. And then you see Terry Silver come back in it as well.
How old's Terry Silver?
He still looks as badass as he did 35 years ago. Still pulls off the ponytail. And you see Chosen walking up to him, and you think they're going to have a fight. After so many years, he goes, "Daniel-san, so many years." And guess what? He bows towards him out of respect. And then honor, yeah. Then you hear a little bit about the background story. He goes, "After our fight, I wanted to die, but my uncle Sato showed me he forgave me for everything. I was young, I was stupid and all this stuff." And then you see him, in a way, they kind of become friends again. They become friends.
So, but do we actually know anything about Chosen's parents?
No, I think maybe Chosen's parents were no longer around, and then Sato kind of took him in and become like the guardian. And he taught him karate and everything. And then he takes Daniel to a Miyagi dojo, and he's training him in skills. Because Daniel
Chosen does that.
Yeah, Chosen does that. He's teaching him how to fight with weapons. Like the legend, you know what the side dagger is, don't you? You know what the side dagger is? It's like a big fork. Ninja use it, and he goes, Mr. Miyagi taught me everything he knew, and he throws him on the ground, and he hits the side dagger at the side of the head, and he goes, "Are you sure about that?"
That's the mysterious.
That's the mysterious. Yes, he got it. Yes, got the reaction.
Okay.
So 3-2 to me. Yeah, that means I'm now the grand champion.
I'm not going to hear the end of this now.
Nah, it's all right, loser. I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
No, you're not.
All the best. Okay, and then then you see what happens is there's a good scene in it where they're sparring outside in the woods, Daniel and Chosen, and he throws him. The Chosen does this type of move that disables the pressure points in the human body. He's basically numbed Daniel's arms,
Chosen's,
and he's numbed his leg, and then he falls on the ground and he's gonna do this. He goes, "I've waited a long time for this." He actually set him up to get revenge. After so many years, he wanted revenge on him. He goes, "I waited a long time for this." He's like, "Chosen, no." And he goes, "Hark." He does the same thing to him, and he still has that same crazy laugh as he had in 35 years ago in Karate Kid 2. Same crazy laugh.
I need to watch this show.
And then he goes, "Oh, that was a joke." He goes, "Aye." "Oh, that was a joke." "Oh, that was a joke." And then he goes, "So what happened to you after all these years?" And he goes, "I have no wife, I have no kids, but my uncle Sato brought me back."
He hasn't got a family.
He's got no family in that. But then he goes, "We should learn these things." He goes, "No, like the secret of Mr. Miyagi's karate." And he goes, "We should learn these things." He goes, "We can't give this to a foreigner."
Does Daniel have a family?
Yeah, he does. He's married and got 2 kids, and he's quite successful. And then he goes, "I can't give this to you because you're a foreigner. It can only be given to somebody of, somebody similar background, yeah." And then he goes to him, "Okay, so Mr. Miyagi didn't keep secrets from me. He treated me like I was his son. Because you and I are basically karate cousins. We were trained by some similar masters."
Mm-hmm.
No, he goes, "All right, fine, let's see what you got." Chosen trains him with the bow staff. He also trains him with the weapons. He also trains him...
So, Miyagi only taught him the first layer of the water in the ocean.
Yeah.
He didn't
go deeper into the ocean.
Wow.
Because he said he did that to protect him. Because if Daniel had... Because if you look in Karate Kid 3, Daniel gets a bit worse, doesn't he? He becomes way more aggressive. He becomes way more angry. He shouts at.
He's evil in this one.
That's because of Silver. Silver knows how to manipulate people. That's what makes him a great.
Like Anakin, isn't it? You know, the dark side.
Yeah, welcome. He is basically. He's kind of like. I think Kreese is like the Darth Vader.
He is.
And Silver's more like Darth Maul, in a way, or somebody who's a bit. I'm not a Star Wars fan. Yeah. Sorry, everybody.
No, it's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Don't you worry about it. You're more of a Trekkie, aren't you?
I'm actually not even a Trekkie. I'll be honest with you.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Oh God!
I'm joking.
We need to watch that film.
Definitely.
March, it's coming out very soon.
Definitely.
We'll give a review to that.
Okay, and so so that because like I said, that was a great thing about Karate Kid 2. You know, it was a different background, and it was quite interesting to see all that. So now you have everything in place, and it was really good to see the first two characters advancing, and it worked well.
Yeah. It's again character development.
Yeah, it's all about
you actually saw it happening. You saw that was one of the best things about that whole film, the whole trilogy.
Yeah,
is the character development.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Especially with Daniel.
Yeah, especially with Daniel, and you see it more in Part 3, and you see it more in Cobra Kai, the series itself. So that was pretty much covered for today. Yeah, thank you again.
You got some reactions.
Yeah, you got reactions out of me as well. So first time for everything. Alright, so again, thank you everybody for tuning in. If you made it to the end of the podcast, please give it a thumbs up. Please like and subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we're going to have some more movie updates and podcasts coming pretty soon.
Oh yes.
Not just trilogies and sagas, but also standalone movies, and some of your favorites. If you'd like to recommend some movies for us to review about, put them in the comments below. We'd be happy to do that. And we'll hopefully speak to you lot soon. Aiden, thank you again.
Please make them 80s films as well. You know, if you've got any 80s films, please comment.
Yeah, definitely. Just throw them in the comments section below.
And appropriate things as well.
Yes, please. Because we have to, obviously, with this
family-friendly content.
Yes, thank you.
No rubbish.
Thank you. So, Aiden, thank you so much for coming in. It's always been a pleasure. Hey. And we'll hopefully speak to you lot soon. Hey. No, that's, you say "tomo arigato," which means thank you very much in Japanese.
Tomo arigato.
Close. Right. Yeah. And then thank you very much, and we'll see you lot soon. And also remember, the 80s rocked.
They do rock.